Hey, VBF, Facebook, welcome to Lunch Break. I'm here with Melanie Mingo.
Yep.
Yep, that's her.
That's me.
It's Mingo, but if you take bingo and you add an M, that's how you spell it, if you were wondering. She let us all know beforehand, and she asked me not to say that, but I had to.
Easier.
It makes it easier, just in case you guys were wondering. If you want to write her a card, just remember bingo, but change the B to an M and you're good. And then we have Evan Bell.
How you doing?
Yeah, and Evan I've known, it's funny, Evan, which is so weird, it makes me feel older, and I always felt like I was the younger person. Now I'm the older person. Mm-hmm. I've known you literally, I think, since you were in diapers.
Growing up.
Yeah, you're a little bit bigger now.
Yeah, a little bit.
Without the diapers.
You know, we don't disclose that.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's crazy seeing you back, too, because I remember you as, a kid, and then seeing you back in a different role. It's a trip. It's cool, though. It's crazy what God does and how he changes our roles and just moves us around however he wants. So, yeah,
for
awesome.
Sure. Cool. So these two, they're here on lunch break today because they actually are the children directors at VBF. Yep. So tell us about that. What does that look like, Mingo? Melanie? I just got Mingo in my head, Melanie. What does that look like on the day? What is a children's director? What does that look like at VBF?
It's funny that you ask that, Vince, because sometimes on Sundays, parents and even volunteers, they don't realize that Evan and I work at the office all week. They just think we show up on Sunday and we pull off the Sunday service for their kids, but throughout the week, we're actually there's so many facets of it. So right now, it's basically just planning on how we're going to deliver the message to the kids. That's a big aspect of it throughout the week. Reaching out to our volunteers and keeping in contact with them, reaching out to other church members, and just filling our minds up with different creative ways that we can get the word out to the kids.
That's awesome. Evan?
Yeah, it's a lifestyle. I love it.
Okay.
We've had to change the way we do things, of course, this past year. And I've been doing it for the past 3 years, and the kids are just what I do it for and for God. And you just have to live that lifestyle, I think.
How do you get into children's ministry? We were kind of talking about this beforehand. It's like something you don't naturally sign up for. I always know when they put the announcement in, which you guys always need help, right? But when they put the announcement out and they're like, hey, sign up for kids ministry, it isn't the one where everybody's excited. Everyone wants to escape their kids, right? They're they want to go on date night. They're trying to drop their kids off at church. So how do you get a passion, or how did you get into this? How is this something that you wanted to do versus got thrown into?
Well, let me lead off with this.
Okay.
After I obviously work for the church now, and when I talk to people out, hey, you should come help out in kids ministry, most commonly people are like, I don't do kids. And I'm like, you don't do kids? What's wrong with you? So I get it. That's so true what you say. And then the other thing I'll say is when God wants you somewhere, when he has a calling for you, he knows how to get you there. And so we're talking about kids today, and that's exactly how God got me to join children's ministry. So I have a 16-year-old, he's my oldest. I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. So when my 16-year-old was a second grader, guess what? He was one of those kids that didn't want to go to children's ministry. And moms, dads, people, if you have a kid that doesn't want to go to children's ministry, it's okay. It happens. It's normal. I had that child myself, and that's how God pulled my heart and said, okay, you want him to have this passion for church, then you show up there and you serve. And that's what got me into children's ministry.
Wow, that's wild. Evan, you're a little bit younger. You don't have kids. So what was your journey into children's ministry? Because that's, for somebody that's young, that seems like the furthest thing from your mind. Hey, I'm excited to go hang out with first, second, and third graders. Right?
Oh, completely.
Okay.
I think not having kids helps because I don't have the negative experience attached to, just all of that.
And we don't have negative experience with our kids. That's what I was saying.
Of course not.
But I think there is, with parents, there is an escape where you want to be an adult, right? We call them adult moments. Now in our house, when me and my wife are having an adult conversation, and that sounds like a rated R conversation, but when we say adult conversation, we're just talking, and we'll tell our kids adult conversation.
Right.
So they know hey, we're going to go keep playing, But I guess, yeah, what you're saying, it's not a negative thing, but there is where parents want to have their time away from the craziness of kids, I would say.
Sure.
And it's crazy fun, but it can be crazy and sometimes overwhelming for parents, right?
And sometimes they're coming to church to get fed, and they want to be a better parent, and they need that.
They need to disconnect.
They need to disconnect for a little bit. And I think Evan, that's why one of the reasons him and I work so well together is because he's on the opposite side of the spectrum than I am. So he brings a young aspect to it, and I bring kind of like a more motherly aspect to it, so that we work really well together. in
I'll let you
team
keep going. Yeah,
ministry.
sorry, I didn't mean.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
the main reason why I love it is because I still feel like a kid, honestly. Like
Okay.
I still have that, whatever it is inside my spirit, still have that seed that was planted in me to, be lively and act like a kid sometimes. Of course, I'm more mature now, but I still love to be entertaining and have fun, be energetic, and being around people like that, which are kids, being around the kids brings that out of me completely. And I cherish those moments. We don't get to have those moments all the time, and especially me not having kids, those moments are super special. So I cherish them, I invest in them, and I see them as just an important calling that God has me there for a reason, using my strengths, my talents, and He's given me a joy just to do it and love and experience His calling. Because I was not like that, a few years ago before I started getting into it. God had to plant the seed of, look, this is who you are. Don't lose who you are. You're still my child, and you still have that spirit in you. And so He had to show me that. I went on a missions trip to Africa a few years ago, and kind of random how I got there. I wasn't really involved in the church at all. I've always been like a Christian. I got dedicated at VBF,
And you were in the kids ministry at VBF.
I
You grew up
was.
there.
Steve Tedder. I mean, I was
Steve Tedder is the OG, by the
OG,
way.
so
I have to give Steve
He
Tedder a
definitely
shout
is.
out because I remember when I was doing youth there, and even before that, Steve Tedder would do these amazing things in kids ministry that I just thought were so, like, with the puppets and all the programs. And I always thought, like, every Sunday, and now I know how big of a job your guys' job is, because every Sunday he would pull together all these resources, not for just one class, but, first, second, third, fourth, fifth,
yeah.
and have all these teachers and all these programs, and he'd pull it off, and it was amazing. He did a great job, and you guys continue to do a great job now. It's so
Thank you.
fun to watch, go in there and see Evan doing a skit and you doing a teaching, and then you have the OGs, Ray and Gidget Mojica. You have
Yep,
these
they're
people
back.
that are like doing these things, and they've been there forever, and it's like you said, it's a lifestyle. You're invested into it. Something that once you do children's ministry, you can't really walk away from it, because you know that God, like you said, has a message, but you also have a burden for it. You have a burden for these students, and that's huge.
Yeah, so I went on that trip, came back, and had just a desire to go back, I guess, and do more mission trips. And I was like, okay, that's not really a practical lifestyle. I live in Bakersfield, and it's not practical. But anyway, my parents, I talked to them, and they're all like, you don't have to do missions trips to minister to kids. And it's like, well, what do I do? And then they inspired me. They're all like, why don't you try the church? And so a few weeks later, I just jumped in and started volunteering. And that was the thing. I just went there on Sundays, one service, and would just volunteer my time. Just go there, and right off the bat, I knew I was going to keep doing it. Right off the bat,
That's
I knew
good.
I loved it. And I got more involved, more invested, and it didn't just change like the way I was looking at the church. It changed how I was outside the church. It changed, how much I was being called to do outside of the church too. It gave me this sense that, my calling is more than just ministering to kids. It's to change myself too and be more like Jesus too. And that's setting an example. And I still live that. It's still going to this day. It never stopped. I'm still trying to grow in that respect, in that regard. So yeah, God planted that seed, and it just kept growing.
That's awesome. And we have a friend that was on the podcast 2 weeks ago, Kyle Lawson, and then he came out the video a couple days ago, and he talked about watering. Basically, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And I love that.
I
It's
saw
kind of
that.
like something that he's developed into his messaging as a business owner.
Mhm.
But that's so true. Like, you don't have to go water the grass. Not that we don't want to be part of the Africa missions and do those
Yeah.
things and water it there, but wherever you're at, do ministry where you're at, water where you're at. And I think that's huge. And so you can grow if people at the church are trying to get involved into a ministry, whether it be children's ministry, junior high, high school, tech, all these different things that we have available, ushers, greeters, all this stuff. Water the grass where you're at, right? Like,
Yeah.
get involved
Right.
at where you're at on a daily basis and change the community around you. It's so easy to think that we have these grand ideas, right? It's funny, especially hanging out with people my age. They have these big ideas about changing the world around them. And it's like, start with changing the world in front of you, right? Change the world where you're at, in the ministry you're at, in the church you're at, and see what God does there. And I know you have more to say about that because we had a conversation, so I'm going to leave that going. But that's good. I love that you got involved in, and I love what you're doing out there, Evan. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So I know with COVID, the way you guys have done children's ministries changed, and that had to be heartbreaking for you guys a little bit, because there was a time where we couldn't do kids ministry because of the restrictions of the state and things like that. So kind of where are you guys at right now? What does it look like right now doing children's ministry?
Well, right now I will say that what I've embraced with COVID is it taught a lot of us different skill sets, right? We learned how to do a lot of things that we wouldn't have been able to do prior. So Evan and I were making multiple videos a week when COVID was at its peak, and now we're not doing quite as many, but we're still doing them. So we have embraced this hybrid of doing kids ministry online and also in person, and I think it's probably going to be like that forever and ever, that we're going to have these online options available for kids all the time, and we're still going to make it great in person as well. So
a really simple question I want to ask you right off the bat, because of COVID. I know a lot of parents aren't even sure on how to get their kids back involved in children's ministry at this point. So what could they do, Melanie, on a base level? Like, they haven't been coming to church because they're afraid, maybe just not afraid, I should say, but they're concerned about COVID, right? That's a better word, concerned.
Right.
How can they get their students involved right now, their kids involved in children's ministry without being there physically?
Right. So one of the things that Evan and I do is we make videos for the kids every single week.
Okay.
And so when we do Zoom Bible studies and things of that nature, we sometimes would see kids on there that we never saw in person because we're one church with multiple campuses, and maybe it was a student that came to a different campus at one time. But we would see kids join us on there that we had never seen, and they got to know us. They got to know who we are through the videos that we would do, and then they would show, now that we do have children's ministry, they would show up. Some of them have come to church, and now we already have that relationship built. Now, for those kids that our parents are not ready to come back to church yet, every single week we post those videos to our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages, and I also email them out. And so kids can really get to know us through those videos, our character. It really is reflective, I would say. We do a good job of showing who we are.
And it's extreme, right? It's
VBF Kids.
VBF Kids. Okay, great. And so let me ask you this, because I always thought this was interesting. When I meet somebody over Zoom, I feel like the meeting's easier in some ways, because I don't have to sit, and I'm a person-to-person type of guy. But I will say there is like a cost to play in some ways. Like, when you go onto Zoom, it ends up being like an easier conversation because you don't have to be as dressed, or like, you feel like you don't have to be as presentable. Like, if I meet you face to face, it's like, okay, I better make sure and I'm proper and all this stuff. Versus on Zoom, I'm like, hey, it's like more casual. So I feel like, do you feel like kids have broke that barrier easier with Zoom, like being able to relate with you guys? I feel like. So the reason why I ask this is because, like, when I play video games with, I have a 13-year-old in the house, and I have a younger ones, and they all love gaming. But when I play with them and they're talking with their friends over chat, they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. But as soon as we invite them over for like dinner, they're like little mice.
Quiet.
They're so quiet. Like, they don't say 2 or 3 words to each other. I'm like, are you guys even friends? Like, what happened? Right? So how does that look? Like, the barrier to like conversations over Zoom, like, has that been healthy and good? And what have you guys seen from that?
I've seen it positive and negative, because they are in their comfort zone when they're interacting with us, because they're in their house, they're comfortable, and they're used to like technology too.
Right.
And there's more time. I see there's a little bit more time to be interactive. Now at church, it's usually go, go, go. We have a job to do.
Right.
And
it's a program.
Usually now our volunteers are the ones who get to even spend more time with the kids. But I liked it to get back into connecting with them. That was really cool. And then the negative is they're on it all the time. They're kind of over it. And it's kind of died a little bit. The hype has kind of died. And
Gotcha.
They're on it all day, and I think they know it's a little bit unhealthy.
Because of schoolwork now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense.
So, yeah. But I've seen kids that were on Zoom, and they've come to our Bible studies, and it's a trip. And they're so much more comfortable with you, because you've showed your true colors. I mean, you're sitting at your house talking with them. It's like you were at their home, and it's like we know each other.
I remember
That's cool.
I remember being a kid and you'd go to school. I remember my 5th grade teacher the most because she was so amazing, but her name was Miss Miller, and she would take us to the movies and do all this stuff with us. But I remember, being in classroom with her, and on a weekend, I'd be out with my family, and I'd see Miss Miller. It was like my eyes would be like,
Aw.
what? Like, it's Miss Miller. I would lose my mind. Like, it's my teacher. Oh, like, she's she's out shopping at the same stores I shop at. It was mind blowing. And I feel like students are like that with Zoom. Like when you're on a Zoom call with them, and then you see them in the grocery store, you see them at church. They're like, you're actually real. You're a real
celebrity
person.
effect.
Yeah, it is.
I see that for sure.
It's kind of cool. And kids are cool like that. Okay, so let's transition a little bit. I want to talk about what principles and foundations should we be teaching our kids, because you guys are with kids every day, with students every day. And because you see their daily walks, you're with them on Zoom. You're in some ways, a support group for the parents, right? What foundations and principles should we be teaching our kids, especially right now, like with technology and Zoom, and like, what do you guys see that's really important?
Well, obviously, I have to lead off with just instilling the love of Jesus, and who they are in Jesus, in them from a very young age. Like, if you don't build off of that, we're going nowhere. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing for sure. And then I think just to be relentless, to be resilient, because we've learned a lot this year that things change, times change, you have to adjust, but God never changes. And so if we can teach them, hey, you can do this. It's going to be hard. You have to wear this mask. You have to do a breakout room. Like we were talking about Zoom on school the other day. My daughter, they do breakout rooms where it's a small group, basically, not the whole class. And my daughter's always put in charge to lead because she's talkative. And she's like, Mom, it's stressful. I'd rather do it in person because nobody will talk back. And I tell her, you can do it. Know? So I think right now in these times, teach them to be resilient, teach them to be relentless, and, just building off the number one rule, love God and love other people. And if we can teach our kids to do that, everything else is just going to flow.
That's good. I'm going to come back to the resiliency thing because that's really, really good.
Okay, so for parents, I can't give you my experience, obviously, but I work with kids, and I have a heart for them, and I see the hurting on them. I see their spirit. I see what's going on. I'm kind of in that life, so I know what their life's kind of looking like right now. And what I see right now is a big tug of war with the world and the kids. The world's just trying to trying to pull them down. They're fighting against them. And as a parent, this how I see it is, if the kid is being overwhelmed by the world and things that are dragging them down, things that are kind of taking them captive, it's your job to grab their end of the rope and help them pull back, fight back. And
that's good.
They need a foundation to do that. They need to have their feet set, and the foundation is Jesus. And whatever way you can show Jesus in your house, set that example. I know families that are doing Bible studies every morning with devotionals, just with their kids. I know that sounds hard, but right now it's just sometimes, it calls for it. It calls for us to do some hard things. And Bible studies, praying with them at night, just having a routine that's against the world's routine. Because the world's routine right now is they get up, they go to school online, and what else? What else is there that's giving them purpose, that's giving them a hope for their future? We have to instill that in them. And then another thing that goes along with their foundation, I think, is freedom, and freedom from that bondage. I don't mean freedom like, go do whatever you want. You're done with school, go have fun. I think freedom from the bondage of the world that's trying to pull them down. And Jesus will obviously give them his spirit, and that's going to set them free from sin. But also give them freedom to go out and love others and be little examples in this world. And I also think when they're set free from the bondage, they need little things that are going to keep them productive. So that should be part of their foundation, little hobbies. Your daughter,
she loves knitting. It's so weird. She's an old lady.
Cool. Yeah.
It's crazy.
So
where did she get that? I'm like, my wife's crafty, but yeah, she loves to knit. And then she figured out she could sell them to adults that were like, those are cute. And she's like, well, you want to buy one?
So we're learning that this week about make the most of what you've been given. So she's been given this gift of knitting that she actually enjoys. And now she's learning how to make the most of it, that she can turn around and sell it. And who knows?
Right. She's so artistic. She's definitely our more artistic one. Although all of our kids are pretty artistic, and I think that comes from parent influence, which
Mhm.
it's funny you talked about purpose
Mm-hmm.
and resiliency. I think those are really great, strong foundations.
Mhm.
But purpose it's interesting because students, I remember being younger and thinking, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, working with students, but it almost feels like students sometimes aim wondrously and not really having a purpose. Like they get into what their friends are getting into and they're influenced by things of the world, like you said, or by video games or all these different things, but they don't really have a foundation of purpose. Like they don't really have something they can anchor down to. And that's huge, right? And obviously we say purpose comes from Christ, right? And
Right.
but they have to be able to have that foundation, be able to have that purpose and something to sink into so that when they get into their hobbies and crafts, they can always come back to their purpose. Like
Right.
even though I'm into knitting or video games or sports and all these things, my bigger purpose in life is Jesus Christ and what
Right.
this looks like. Resiliency is huge too because whether we want to believe it or not, I think as adults we want to believe that the world is rainbows and
Yeah.
and candy canes, and sometimes it's not, right? And especially adults have it hard, but sometimes students have it way harder than we even realize and imagine. The things that are happening in their home lives, the things that are happening at school, and the things that they keep inside. And Pastor Ron talked about last night. He might have talked about it Sunday, but he talked about how depression, all these different things can become very dark in our lives. They
Yeah.
can become something that overwhelms us. And students are no different than adults. Like they
For
deal
sure.
with these same things.
Mhm.
And so resiliency is huge, but I want to spin resiliency, and this was kind of in our notes, and I told you we would go there and talk about hope. Like
Yeah.
how do kids find not only resiliency, but how do they find hope? Because not all of our students are in these amazing households. They're not all living these fairy tale lives. They're not all dealing with the same things. A lot of kids, they have complex issues. They have, especially with the internet, right? They have bullying issues. They have things going on in their lives that as adults we just think they're little things, but they're a lot
Oh, yeah.
bigger in
Big
students' lives, right? So how do they not only get resiliency, but how do they find hope to get past some of these things they're dealing with?
I think, as parents, as role models, leaders, we have a responsibility to instill those biblical truths in them. And our hope, it's the confident assurance that God's going to do what the word says he's going to do. And so if a kid who's getting bullied knows, like, I can be strong, God is with me, I am loved, they can stand on those truths, and they can find hope in that, and that they can combat those other situations that they're dealing with.
For sure. I know Ron talked about on Sunday, he talked about hope, and he shared the story of Jairus, and basically his daughter was dying, and he went to Jesus, and then went in the middle of that story there was an interruption, and this lady was healed, and in that story you later on find out that his daughter's died, and Ron paints it out beautifully. He says in this moment a lot of people lose hope. Like he says in that thing, leave the master alone, like, because your daughter's dead, and they laugh at Jesus because Jesus says she's only sleeping, and so there's all this hope lost, but he says in Christ we can never lose hope. Like that's huge. Like hope is, it's masterful. For students, they have to be able to look past like the daily things, right, that happen in life, because there's things that are and adults too. There are constantly things that are knocking us off our, I guess you can say, our seat or whatever we think we have, that's constantly happening, right? We're being knocked down, we're being broken, and it's easy to lose hope in those scenarios. It's easy to lose purpose, right? Because I really feel like if you start losing hope, you start losing purpose, because they're almost tied in together. So when the students are dealing with these things, what can parents do to continue to instill hope and let them know, like, hey, it's going to be okay?
Yeah, I mean, I've had to experience hopelessness
Right.
many times. Everyone goes through it. And you need a source, you need something to go to renew your strength. That's God. And we can run and not grow weary, walk and not be faint if we're connected to him. So that means if we're going through trials, it's just James 1:2, like, we can consider it pure joy. Everything we go through, because it's producing perseverance, and it's God's plan. If we know God, we know he's working it for good, and he has a plan, and that whatever we're going through is producing perseverance. So I see it. I'm very competitive. So when something presses
Agreed.
me, something presses me, my immediate nature is to press back and fight back. And And when trials press me, that's the same thing. It's producing strength in me. It's producing all those good things, but I have to press back, if that makes sense. I have to fight back
So
with hope, with God and prayer and understanding what his will is in that moment.
So I love what you just said, because you said you let it fight back, and you talked about resiliency. So let's bring this in a little bit. So I've golfed with Evan. That's kind of one. That's like the VBF staff thing that you have with the guys. We've golfed, and it's funny because you're kind of the better golfer of everybody. Like everyone's like, "Oh, Evan's just gonna just."
He played golf in high school.
He's gonna embarrass us, is basically what we say. But as many years as you've been playing golf, you're out there the other day. We're on a tee box. And you're making these adjustments to your swing, and you're like, "Oh, dude, I'm gonna do this thing," and then you just hit the ball out of the moon, and you're like, "Oh, I just tried this new grip," and I was like, "I'm gonna try it." Like you convinced me that, hey, maybe this grip is actually a better way to swing, and I got into it. But I want to talk about the adjustment, because you played golf for all this time, but while you're at the golf course, you knew things weren't going good. You were able to make an adjustment to your game to get you back on course. What are the adjustments in that we can, like, how do we convince students and kids to make adjustments, and what do those adjustments look like? And especially parents, what do the adjustments look like for the parents?
Well, Evan said a key word at the end, and that word was prayer. And as a parent, I can speak from experience. Prayer is such a powerful, powerful thing. And God has a way of answering prayers for kids to instill that faith and grow that faith in them at that age. And I have seen him answer so many prayers that I've prayed over my children. And so I can't explain how powerful it is. If your kid's being bullied at school and you pray verbally out loud over them in the morning every single day. We talked about watering grass earlier. It doesn't get green after the first day.
Right.
You have to keep coming back to it. You have to tend it. The weather changes. And so as a parent, you have to be resilient. You have to be continuous, pray fervently over your child. And that's just a small adjustment. Adjust your prayer. Don't pray the same prayer pray a different prayer if the Spirit is leading you that way. But when you pray like that over your children, it's going to do something powerful, and it's going to change things as well. Habits is a big thing too. Just little habits at home. So speak positive affirmations over your children. They're listening, they're watching. Be careful about what am I saying or doing in the home that maybe is having an effect on them.
Yeah.
And so be aware, be self-aware of those types of things.
That rubs off on them. And I think God said the parents in the household be the leader and to be the foundation. Obviously, God's the foundation. But for the kids, they're looking up to them more than anyone. And you can bring peace into your home. You can walk in and change the environment, be a thermostat. And I think the parents have that responsibility. And in this world of anxiety, kids are feeling anxious. And I read something that said kids are more susceptible to feel that they are the cause of the problem. So they get hit hard when things go wrong.
Right.
Because they're thinking, what did I do wrong?
Right.
What could I do and then they have anxiety. And it's up to parents and leaders, us too. We have to set examples to be peaceful and act and show that everything's going to be okay. This is God's plan. Let's work in it. Let's be hopeful in it.
Well, I think too what you said what you guys are both saying too, planting all these different seeds, right? Have good habits, and then watering, right? Because if you don't plant these seeds, and seeds are small, and like you said, you don't see growth immediately, but over time your kid starts I have a 13-year-old now, and it's crazy to see the growth in him, responsibility. We were talking the other day, we were talking just about buying something. I was like, oh, I think I'm going to buy a PS5, right? Which I did. But I think I was like, I'm going to buy a PS5. And he's like, Dad, do we really need to buy a PS5? I'm like, who is this kid? Like, I'm like, what kid says that? Like, right? Like, do we really need that? I'm like, is he trolling me or is he serious right now?
Trying to get on
But let's talk about, right. Yeah. He's trying to get points with me, but let's talk about small things. So today marks the anniversary of the Challenger, which was the NASA spacecraft that went down in the 80s, and a terrible story, and our hearts and prayers go out for the people that lost during that time. I'm sure that had a generational impact, I would say. But there's a documentary out now, and doing some reading. The Challenger, you think about this huge spacecraft, and you think about all the technology that goes into the smartest scientists in the world, and the cause of it crashing had to do with a little gasket that surrounded the fuel basically the fuel door. It was just a gasket, a little tiny piece of this gigantic. Like, you ever seen a rocket ship, right? You ever see like, and you think of all the moving parts, all the things that have to happen, right? And it ended up being this little gasket that fell. And what was crazy about the story is, or, you know, about this is that they knew that the gasket was faulty, that under a lot of pressure, under extreme temperatures and all these different things, that it could fail. And so they went back and forth and they told people. And at the end of the day, they wanted to meet a launch date. And because they felt like, okay, they thought it would or be okay to fly, they went ahead and green lighted this gasket. And this is what caused the whole entire explosion, which led to, you know, a lot of trauma for people and things like that. Such a small thing for such a big spacecraft. So I want to talk about how small things can have a huge impact on our lives. And it just, what does that mean for kids and parents? And what are the small things we should be doing? What are the small things we should be looking at?
So I have two things that come to my mind. Come to mind when we say small things. I'll lead off with the prayer one because we just kind of came from that.
Okay.
I just want to talk about, you know, what 5 minutes could do for your day.
Okay.
You know, 5 minutes of whether you spend it praying as a family, spending those 5 minutes praying, spending it doing devotions with your kids. Like, we all waste multiple increments of 5 minutes throughout the day. And
For
if
sure.
we could just be a little bit more intentional about those extra minutes our day, that little bit of an intention with just a couple of minutes will make such a huge difference. So the next thing is, it doesn't have to be a big adjustment, you know, that we do. We talked about adjustments. I've seen a lot of parents, especially during COVID, we're trying to social distance. We're trying to be adventurous and go outdoors and do hikes and do bike rides. And we're baking stuff from scratch. And we're trying all these new Pinterest ideas and being inspired. And so how much more of an influence would you have in your child if you brought the gospel into that while you were doing that? If you said, okay, we're going to go out on a bike ride, and when we get back, I want you to tell me what one place that you saw God while we were on the bike ride.
That's huge.
It. You don't have to talk about God again. You can just talk about it when you get back, you know?
But it's something so small. It takes no time. Like you said, like 5 minutes, we can spend 5 minutes scrolling with our thumb as a parent, right? Or 5 minutes doing whatever, but it's just taking the small time and bringing Jesus into the equation. That's huge.
For sure.
Yeah, so I think small responsibilities are big too.
Ooh.
Because when I was a kid, I always felt like I didn't have enough control over what I was to do. And with that, I felt like there wasn't much freedom, and then I felt like I had to rebel. And I don't know if we're going to talk about that, but I felt like I had to find my own ways of doing things that I liked. But opportunities to show that you can be responsible, little opportunities, I think are important. And I don't have experience as a parent to do that, but I know as a kid what I found, or what I felt was special to me when my parents would give me little things to do around the house, or if they trusted me with something small. Even I would just feel more loved, feel more cared, feel more responsible, and then feel like you have more purpose. That's a big thing in a kid's life. And I also think they have a lot of things that they're attached to, that they could be small things, but they're weighing them down big. And as a parent, it's going to be your responsibility also to detach them from that. And small things that they can get into are productive things. So I think the small things will add up to big things, of course. That's actually our memory verse for the month in the extreme. Those who can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very much. So yes, giving them little responsibilities, but also giving them little opportunities to invest in something that's productive. And I know this family that they don't do any electronics or entertainment. Of course, you have to go to school online.
Right.
They don't do any electronics till after 4 p.m.
Gotcha.
And these kids come to our church, and I remember this girl telling me, this little girl, she would come up to me and she would tell me about the books that she's reading. And she would tell me like it's her favorite movie. Like you would expect a kid to be all excited about like a new movie that came out. And it's just shocking. It's so abnormal. And I was like, that's really cool. You're awesome. You're smart. Good job. And I'm like, that is so different for a kid to be, invested in something that's productive, something that's going to be good for their future. And I know we've all messed up at that at some point and had to learn the hard way. But as a parent, we can kind of kind of rescue our kids from having to learn the hard way.
Well, that's what's nice about the Challenger story is ever since they figured out they fixed the small thing, they never had an accident
Yeah.
past that. And I think being able to acknowledge you're going to mess up, you're going to fall, right? The word says that we all fall short.
Yep.
And that's okay, but being able to get right on the right path and you know, fixing those small things is huge, and that comes with building good habits. But I love what you said, and we'll end with that, Evan. I love that you said you have to give your kids purpose in giving them not a duty or a chore, but giving them, you know, a task that they can complete so that they feel like they've accomplished something, right? Because how much, like, and you guys see this firsthand, when your kids do something that they didn't think they can do, how proud of themselves are they? Like, they it's like they glow, like they couldn't imagine that they could even done that thing, but then when they're able to complete it and overcome it, you're instilling purpose into them, you're instilling good habits into them, and you're instilling the fact that they, you know, there is hope that they can get over this, that they can do this.
Yeah. One of our goals, or my goals, I'm sure you're on the same page, but in our ministry is to use the kids a little bit more, have them a little bit more interactive within the operation of service.
Right.
And that could be volunteering, you know, and helping out before service starts, or it could be on stage helping out with a skit. And it puts the kids up there into a purpose, into something that's they have to perform and achieve and accomplish, and then afterwards they reap the benefits. And it's teaching them that system of, you know, reward and leadership, and also responsibility, of course. But having that purpose is huge, and as a kid, that's where you learn that foundation, that your life is meaningful. Like, you're not just here to have fun and just enjoy it. Your life has meaning. You can change this world. You can live like Jesus and change this world. And he has a calling for you. And to find that calling, you kind of have to do things that you experiment with, accomplish different things, find out where you fit. And that's why in our ministry, I just have it on my heart. Where can I use kids today where they're feeling used? And that's just been on my heart huge, especially in this season.
That's huge. And man, you guys, like I said, you guys do such an awesome job. And I thank you. I know my Kendall, my younger daughter goes there, and Jude does too. And they come back and they're always so excited. So if you guys are watching today, or you know somebody that has a student, get them plugged in with these two. I mean, they bring so much life. I know that Kendall comes back and she's always excited about her conversations with you, and Evan too, and just the things that are happening out there. And it means so much as a parent to be able to have a partner in the relationship with Christ, right? That because sometimes as a parent, and you've seen this firsthand, the kids, they don't really want to hear it from you. They want to know that other people are also on the same page as your parents, right? Because parents don't always know what's best, right? So it's like they have to hear it from somebody else, and so having that support. So I thank you guys for that. So if you guys want to get involved, if you're a part of VBF, you're not part of VBF, you're watching this and you want to get your students involved, or you want to get involved in ministry, bingo.
It's actually Mingo with an M. Yes. So, you know, you can reach out to us via VBF Kids, Instagram, Facebook. Send us a message, or you can email me or give me a call at the church office.
What is your email?
It's melanie@vbf.org.
And your email is?
evanb@vbf.org.
Perfect.
But, yeah, we're actually trying. So if you come on Sunday and you're actually involved in the kids ministry and you have kids in there, we've made these sign up cards. They can sign up. We're trying to get their numbers and like actually reach out to them, and so they can reach out to us a little bit more personally.
That's awesome. I know, and it's crazy. It's like the little things. Like my kids get a card from you guys in the mail, and the fact that you would take 5 minutes and write a handwritten note, it isn't what Dad did on the refrigerator. It's what you guys sent them during the week that's on the refrigerator. So it's huge.
Yeah. While you say that, I have to take a minute just to shout out Christine from KM First.
Oh yes.
Because she has written almost every kid in her ministry has gotten a card in the mail.
For sure.
And for any adult, and we write cards out in the mail and send them out as well. But she's just so dedicated to that. And for any adult who's ever received a card or a letter in the mail with a verse from a pastor. I
it's
served
so cool.
and came to VBF for many, many years. I've only been on staff for almost 2 years now. but every letter and card that came in the mail meant so much, and I know it means just as much to the kids.
It's huge.
So.
Oh, it does for sure. And yeah, we need to have Christine on here because her story's so cool with her running
She's
and the way
amazing,
she gets
yeah.
involved. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for lunch break. We will see Pastor On is up this Sunday, and we will see you there. Thank you.